me in studio this morning is Senator Bob Corker. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Hal. Good to be with you.
Great to see you.
Yes, sir. Great to be back. 17 years on the air at this time. Yeah, just incredible.
I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
You know, when I was going through my notes last night about what to talk to you about this morning, I wanted to roll back to you being mayor of a city. Because I think going from being the mayor of Chattanooga, seeing dynamic growth there, seeing dynamic public-private partnerships that really help that community grow, and then jumping to Washington, D.C. and seeing it happen from the other side, how federal decisions affect municipalities, you have kind of a unique view, and being a businessman, you have a very unique view on what's going on in Washington. And now that you've been there for a while, do you ever reflect on your time as mayor, as a businessman, and does that inform the way you kind of work in the Senate?
Well, I think it's definitely had an impact on my service there. And you know, let's face it, I mean, as a mayor, you can wake up every day and throw deep and move a city ahead. And gosh, we built our waterfront. You know, we're looking down in Chattanooga. We now the only city in America in the Western Hemisphere that has a gigabit available to every citizen within 600 square miles. I mean, so there's all kind of things that are happening there. I was able to follow through with Volkswagen as a senator, but had built the industrial park as a mayor. My business background has really helped a lot, even during this financial crisis, just in being able to converse about it in a way that's very different than most, and then hopefully to pursue policies. But it's definitely changed. It's affected me in a big way, and I think has informed my activities in the Senate. Of course, you get the Senate, and you know, you wake up, Hallerin, and for some reason the other 99 folks just don't do what I say. You know, it's a little different than being a mayor or a CEO of a company, and you sort of have to learn it's a pacing. It's a different kind of environment up there, and yet the decisions we make have a huge impact on Knox County and the state and the country. I
know that's been frustrating for you. Now, let me start here then. The other morning, I was watching, not watching, but I was discussing something it was an article I saw, and it was about evidence-based budgeting. And they were talking about how the Obama administration has said, we want to do evidence-based budgeting, and we want to use big data to try to figure out what works and what doesn't. And if it's not working, we need to stop doing it. If it is working, we need to optimize it. And as I'm reading this article on quote-unquote evidence-based budgeting, I decided to go online and plug in the date, April 29th, 2009, which was the last time we passed a budget.
Yeah.
And at that point, it had been 1,150 days. It was 3 years, 4 months, and a day or something like that. How can you have evidence-based budgeting when you don't have a budget?
Yeah, it's unbelievably irresponsible that we don't have a budget. I think it's been, I want to say 1,125 days since we've had one. And what people don't realize, I think they look at the Senate and say, well, it takes 60 votes. A budget is a privileged piece of legislation. It only takes 51 votes to pass a budget. And you know, the majority party has 53 votes, and of course the House is Republican controlled. It's actually passed a budget. What you'd have to do, I mean, this is what Americans want to see happen, is us go through the tough, grinded out work it takes to reach consensus between Republicans and Democrats. But when you don't even bring a budget to the floor for 3 years, that work is not happening. And Hallerin, for what it's worth, I have quit voting for all spending bills until we pass a budget. I think it's totally irresponsible, on one hand, to want to spend money, right, but on the other hand, for us not as a Congress to sit down and grind it out and do the tough work to create a vision for the future, which is what a budget does. A budget lays out your priorities. And as you've mentioned, I mean, there's no way to measure things when we're on autopilot the way that we are right now.
We did a big forum together out at Pellissippi State, and you did a presentation where, and I've heard several people talk about having a balanced budget amendment versus putting a real cap on the percentage of GDP that this government can spend. That really, if you really want to be aggressive about spending and you want to create some growth, you've got to say it's got to be no more than 18% or 17% or 16%. You've talked about that.
Right.
Here's where I guess I'm frustrated, and I would love your thinking on this. If we don't have a budget, and if we're not close to having a budget, and government is kind of growing out of control, what has to happen in the next presidential cycle to at least start to move us in that direction? Because you got to have something happen at the presidential level and then in both houses of Congress.
So look, a budget is important, and yet a budget really mostly deals with, a budget deals with everything, but it's really discretionary spending. You know, we've got a cap on discretionary spending this year at $1,047 billion, but let's put that in perspective. Overall, the federal government's going to spend $3.6 trillion of your money and your listeners' money. Most of the money is in the entitlement programs. And what we're really doing as a country right now, Hallerin, because there's so much pressure in that Congress has not really taken on the entitlements, we are eating our seed corn. We continue to contract, and really, you know, we're not doing the things we ought to do in infrastructure. We're not doing the things we ought to do in research and development and those kind of things because Congress has not had the will to take on the entitlement programs, which absolutely are on autopilot and expanding geometrically. So the budget is important, but you know what's even more important? That is linking what I would call pro-growth tax reform, where you eliminate the most, if not all, of the loopholes that Congress has put in the tax code to drive your behavior. There's $1.2 trillion of those each year. You could lower people's marginal rates, lower corporate rates, and do so in a way that still generates more revenues. And what we need to do is tie that to entitlement reform. I mean, those two components are the most important components right now as it relates to causing our country to be where it needs to be fiscally. And we need to buffer ourselves from what's happening in Europe right now. We've got slowdowns in China and India, and I really believe, Hallerin, now's the time to act, to go ahead and show the world and for citizens in this country to know that we've actually addressed the spending and deficit problems that this country has. I don't know of a Republican or Democrat that wants to jerk the rug out from under any seniors, but we've got to start turning the ship in a direction that we know is going to allow our country to be solvent in the future. We are involved in nothing but generational theft right now as we pile up trillions and trillions of dollars of debt on your son and your daughter, on my daughters, and on the young people of this country.
8:43, my guest is Senator Bob Corker. He's running for re-election. He's in studio with us this morning. And, you know, as I look at it, there's no way. Every report that's been done in the last decade about our economy has said the uncontrolled growth of entitlement spending is unsustainable. You as a businessman would never allow me to come to you and say, Bob, we don't have a budget. We haven't had one for 3 years. And by the way, we're going to spend $1 trillion more than we take in. As a pure business person, you would say, Hallerin, I like you. You're a nice enough guy. That's not acceptable.
It's not. You know, when we had the financial crisis, Hallerin, you know, people said, hey, we've got this crisis in 08 and 09, but and so, you know, people said, well, it's okay to have deficit spending for a year as we try to get first level ad infinitum. I mean, it's going into the future forever. Let me just give you one stat. The average two heads of households working in America will pay into the Medicare program over their lifetime $119,000, including the part the employer pays on their behalf. So you combine those payments into today's dollars, 2012 dollars. That family will pay over their lifetime into Medicare $119,000. That same family over their lifetime in today's dollars will take out of Medicare $357,000.
Wow.
Now, your listening audience knows you can't make that up with volume. I mean, that is a problem. And the numbers get wider and wider apart. And you've got 20 million more Americans in my generation, the baby boom generation, coming onto the rolls over the next 10 years. So this is a train wreck coming. Medicare is going to be insolvent in the year 2024. And the fact is, A lot of our seniors aren't saving as much. People aren't preparing as much for the future. So we not only have generational theft occurring, but we've got other issues that are going to wreak havoc on our society if we don't begin dealing with them right now and turning the ship, as I mentioned, in a very different direction.
840